So let me continue with the remote method invocation that I explained in the previous class. Quickly, let me go to the explanation. I'll take just 10 or 15 minutes maximum, not more than that. Okay. So let me just go through this. Probably this will be continued tomorrow, okay? But I'll be showing one such example to you so that Govind sir can continue very easily. So these are the steps. This is what I was speaking in the last class, okay? How do you implement RMI in Java? So step 1 goes for creation of the remote interface. I'm not getting the pointer, just 1 minute. I'll share it again. Yeah. First step is create the remote interface. Okay, this is what I have spoken about. Remote interface must contain all the functions that are required to be implemented. Okay. Then second task is provide the implementation of the remote interface. It means the methods that are being declared in the interface must be implemented with their proper implementation. Actually speaking, in the real world, you are not bothered about all these things. They have been done on the server end. The administrative purpose, whoever is there, would have already implemented this and kept it. For example, if you try to call google.com, when it tries to access the sign in option available on google.com, and when I click on sign in, it should navigate to Gmail. It should call that function. That function calling is being taken care on the server end. Okay, remotely it has been happening. But now since you are creating both the client as well as server, you are supposed to do these things. Okay. Actually speaking, the first 3 steps are not at all mandatory if you are only the client. Okay. But since we are generating a client server application from our end, we have to do like this. So first step is create the remote interface. Second, provide the implementation of the methods that are available in the remote interface. Third, compile the implementation class. Okay, compile the implementation class. If you want to take this down, you can take this down or take a screenshot of this so that I can discuss ahead with the same steps. Compile the implementation class and then create the stub and the skeleton. When I want to create the stub and the skeleton, I would use a simple command at the command line argument at the command line, which is called as RMIC. Guys, please don't try to do it in Eclipse. Eclipse has a different methodology to be followed, but this is what I'm speaking at the dollar prompt right now. Tomorrow's class will be on Eclipse, RMI on Eclipse. Okay, only these RMIC, all those things will alter, but overall working remains the same, no change at all. Now, first step is create the remote interface, provide the proper methods. Second, implement those methods that are being defined in the interface. I call it as an implementation class. Then compile and keep that implementation class because bytecode has to be generated. Only for that reason the compilation is required. Once bytecode is available, any client, any server is accessible to that. Then create stub and skeleton objects. How I can do that? By using at the dollar prompt RMIC tool. I'll show you how to do that. Then start the RMI registry. What is this RMI registry I have been speaking about? This we will see in the coming slides. Then create the server application, create the client application. These 6 steps you remember. First step, create the remote interface. Second, implement the methods that are available in the interface. I call it as implementation class. Third, compile the implementation class and keep it because I need what is called as bytecode of the implementation class. Then use RMIC tool to create stub and skeleton. Once these are ready, run the RMI registry with a particular port number that you will see in the coming slides. Then create and start the server, create and start the client. Okay, these are the overall steps that are available. Let me take one simple example which is called as adder interface. Okay, I talk about addition of two numbers. Simple addition of two numbers I have taken as an example. Okay, there's a client, there is a server. Client sends two numbers, and from the server side it should send back the result of adding x and y. Okay, very simple example I have taken. Next, first task is create the remote interface. Okay, so I'm doing that. What is that I'm doing? I'm trying to create a remote interface. How do I do this? Whenever you create a new interface which contains the different methods that need to be implemented in the later stage, that interface must extend from the basic interface which is remote. Why this is required? Because remote is the basic interface which is available as part of RMI. So any user defined interface that you are creating, that must extend this remote interface. Are you getting this? I'm creating my own user defined interface which is always extending remote interface so that I have the accessibility to the remote exception class which is available as part of remote interface. So all the functionalities that are required are available as part of remote interface. That's why any interface, user defined interface that I'm creating must extend the remote interface. Then inside this interface, I'm going to give the overall header, function header of the method that I will be implementing in the later stage. And by default, any method would be declared as public because it has to be available for anybody whoever calls for it. That's why by default, the access specifier has to be public for the method that you are giving as part of the user defined interface that you are creating. And any method may throw what is called as remote exception. Any doubt for the step 1? Please let me know. I'm taking an example and mapping it to the steps. Please let me know. Any doubt at this point? Quickly. If no doubts, just tell no doubts.
No doubts, ma'am.
No doubts. So I'll proceed ahead. Second step, it is nothing but creation of the implementation class. Okay, I call it as implementer of the class. So how can I do that? Either I can do it by using what is called as unicast remote object class, which is already available in RMI. This is what is the beauty of Java, first of all. Okay, either you can do it by using unicast remote object class. About this I'll be discussing in my next class. Okay, right now I will not discuss not in much detail. Okay, this is a class which will give you an accessibility to what is called as a RMI registry. Okay, now I have unicast remote object, or there is something called as export object method available as part of unicast remote object. I will be going ahead with the simple thing that is available as extends unicast remote object. So the implementer class that you are creating, user defined implementer class for this function which has been declared as part of the user defined interface, when you are trying to implement that, it must extend what is called as unicast remote object. Okay, so how can I do that? Look, this is adder remote is what? It is an implementer class. What was the interface? Interface is adder. Please note it down somewhere so that you will not get confused. Adder is an interface which contains a method declaration. Method name is add. Adder has add method declaration. Now what I have adder remote which acts as implementer class of add function. Okay, that's why I will write implements adder. I'll write implements adder, and any user defined class that you create in RMI must extend from what is called as unicast remote object in order to make it a remote class. In order to make the user defined class that you are creating a remote class, for that reason. Okay, now what this contains? This contains one default constructor that needs to be write every time. Okay, only using like this. It may not do anything other than this. Then I will write the implementer function. Simple implementation here because I have taken addition of two numbers. Very simple example I have taken. So addition of two numbers has been done here. But in doing so, this addition of two numbers has to be made publicly available on the internet. For that reason, all these steps are for that reason, not otherwise. Okay. Then you need to have a creation of public class which is called as implementer class, which implements the interface that you have generated, and it extends unicast remote object in order to make the implementer class a public class. Okay, remote class. Now step 3, create the stub and skeleton objects using RMIC tool. How to do that? You just have to have a connection between RMIC command and the adder remote class that you have created just now. What is adder remote? I told you to note it down. What is adder remote?
Implementer class.
Correct. It's an implementer class. So you are trying to connect to the stub and the skeleton the adder remote class, implementer class that is being generated on the server end. Okay, this is all things done on the server end. Client is not coming into picture at all here. So once I have done this, I have to start this RMI registry. What is this RMI registry doing? Let me take up a briefly explanation about this RMI registry. Please pay attention. RMI supports different functions associated. Okay. One of the function is something called as bind. What is this binding? I have something called as bind. This bind is nothing but whenever you create a new implementer class, that new implementer class needs to be added to the depository or the repository, similar to the DNS. Whenever a new server comes, whenever a new client comes, that new client would have got its own name, would have got its own IP address that needs to be registered. How that registration is done? Registration is done by admitting that or adding that to the repository. That adding of repository, adding this new method, new implementer class to the repository is called as binding. So whenever you bind must have one or the other way to handle that particular implementer class. So as and when the new implementer class comes, that needs to be added to the registry. That is done by a special function of RMI registry called as bind. There is one more function called as rebind. I have bound the method, but I want to rebind it with a different name. That is called as rebind. Third is unbind. Unbind, it removes the entry of that particular method or the implementer class. Now on, you don't have accessibility to that. And there is fourth one called as lookup. I hope you are noting down what all things I am telling. First thing, talking about bind. Whenever new implementer class gets created, that needs to be added to the repository. That is done by bind or rebind. Both will do the same thing. Third one is unbind. You want to unbind. It means you want to remove already existing class from the repository. Fourth is called as lookup. Who does this lookup? Definitely the skeleton. What skeleton does? Skeleton does whenever it receives a request, marshals and unmarshalling, all those things are done. And when it is trying to send that to a particular remote object, it searches the RMI registry, looks up. Okay, are you there? Are you there? This looking up is done by the skeleton. And lookup will call upon the particular implementer class with which it is being stored. And then that implementer class has the implementation for a particular function that is being called. That class, implementer class, may have multiple implementation functions. Among them, whom it has to look for, that is taken care by lookup function of RMI registry. So RMI registry supports 4 different functions: bind, rebind, unbind, and lookup. There is something called as register, unregister. Please listen to it. Register and unregister. Register tells, okay, you are a new entry. Come on, register with me. Only then I'll bind you with a particular name. You don't want to be in my repository. You call what is called as unregister. And when you call unregister, I'll unbind you from the name that I have supported you. Are you all getting this, or any doubt at this point? Please let me know, otherwise I'll continue with this.
Ma'am, what is the difference between bind and register?
Bind and register. Register is the first request. You will try to tell, okay, I want to enroll my name to the class. I want to enroll my name to the class. Then yes is given. That yes is nothing but, okay, you are allowed in my class. Yes is nothing but registration acceptance. But adding your name or number into my roll list and telling you, look, you are there at 34th position. Look, you are there at 34th position. That is called as binding. Register is permitting. You are allowed to enter into my repository. Okay?
Yes, ma'am, clear.
Okay. Now, how you can do this? I can start this registry. See, I would have created my implementer class, and that implementer class is already been added to the repository. How it has been added? By calling this RMIC, this particular adder remote would have called register and bind. This step 3 does all the things. What is that? Calling register as well as bind or rebind, whatever it is. So all those things would have been done when I call RMIC. There is explicit calling of the function in client and server that I will show you when I show the next slide. Okay. Now, this RMI registry has to be started, woken up. Wake up, man, I want to search for something in your repository. How I can do that? I can do that by calling, there is explicit command for that, which is called as RMI registry. And I will assign at this point 5000 as the port number, similar to the socket. At a time, the same RMI registry has been accessible or is being accessible to multiple users. So multiple users have to be separated. How do they need to separate? They are separated by the port number. This is unique number for that particular communication. Same number, if you try to use, it will give you an error, exception. Now, I have created the remote interface. I have implemented the remote interface. Okay. Now I have started the RMI registry at port number 5000. Next is create the server. Look at this point. Okay, look at this point. Since you are trying to implement the server also from your side, this is crucial. Look over here. On the server side, you are calling what is called as rebind. You're calling what is called as rebind on a port number 5000 on the local host. Right now it is localhost because you are trying to run both client as well as server on the same end, on the same machine. Otherwise, there will be IP address colon the port number on which the RMI registry has been called. Now, when you call rebind, the rebind is nothing but it would have bound previously. It would have bound previously by calling RMIC. Now I am rebinding it with the name that I want. What is the name? The name is stub. This is an instance of adder remote. What is this adder remote? Implementer class. Stub is an instance of implementer class with which I want to rebind already created RMI registry entry. So the same thing would have been given with some name, but I want to reassess it with the name that I want. And what is the name that I have given? Stub. Who is this stub? Stub is the instance of adder remote. It is an instance of adder remote. Who is this adder remote? It is the implementer class. But it returns what type of object? It is an object of adder class. It's an object of, sorry, it's not class, it's an object of, I'll go back, okay? It's an object of adder interface. Adder interface in turn contains add function, and this add function is implemented by what is called as adder remote. So there is a connection from adder remote to the interface. How I am doing that? By doing this instantiation. What is that instantiation? The interface within which the function is called, or the declaration of the function is there. That interface object is receiving an instance of what? Adder remote. Who is this adder remote? It is the implementer of the same interface. Implementer of the same interface. So what it does, adder, it creates its own object. That object would receive the implementation class. This is how the linking of implementation class and the interface is working. And the object that generated, that is passed as parameter to rebind. So the thing that got created initially, that was not named with anything. But now I'm renaming that by the object that I have created on the port number 5000, which is given in RMI registry. Slash SDM is nothing but what? Under this folder, this will be there. Under this folder, this will be there. Any doubt at this point? See, this is a bit complex. You need to understand it. You have to work on it for more than 2 to 3 examples. Only then you will understand it. First thing that I did, created an adder interface which contains add function as the declaration. Then I created adder remote, which is an implementer class, extended unicast remote object, implemented adder. In that, there is implementation of add function. Okay. Then I started RMIC. I used RMIC to connect adder remote to connect to the implementer class. Then I called RMI registry on a particular port number. The port number that I have given, with the same port number, I have to call rebind. Why this rebind? Rebind will bind that 5000 port number to the function that needs to be called. This server function, actually it is done by the server. We are not bothered about. We are only the client. Since we are implementing both client and server, I am trying to show you the server working also. This is actually done by the server. Client doesn't do that. I'll show you the client, then you will understand it. Client does only this much. Client does only this much. Okay. You can have stub or skeleton. The name can vary anyhow. It is user defined name. Okay. Probably you got confused because I have used stub there. It should be skeleton. Okay. Now, what this does, adder is the remote interface. For that, I have created an object and I have called lookup function for the RMI registry. At port number 5000, using the following IP address, I will call or I will search for SDM. What is this SDM? It's a folder that contains the implementer class. Implementer class. Actually, on the client server, this will be a header. I will not do it explicitly when I am simply calling the function. Explicit function call will not involve all these steps, but I am creating a mock of client server application. I have used these things. Now, inside this, there is something called as system.out.println, because I am trying to call the function that needs to be called, and it prints the result as soon as it gets. So using this object, I'm trying to call add 34,4. So this goes to the server who will be listening. In the server, searches for the particular value that is being sent and searches in SDM folder. There is a linking from this rebind to the adder. Okay, there is an object linking available. So through that object, it goes back to the remote, adder remote, and in the adder remote, there is a function definition. This is how the linking happens. Got confused? A bit?
Little bit, ma'am.
Little bit. Okay, when I take up one more example in the next class, definitely you will get to know about it. I'll be typing in front of you all those things. Will that be okay?
Ma'am, where it should be skeleton and where it should be stub. I mean, it is user defined, I know that, but
I'm so
normally,
sorry. I think I have used here a stub. That's why that's a mistake from my end. 1 minute. The server side must contain skeleton. Okay, I'm so sorry. It is typographical error. This should be skeleton.
okay, ma'am,
Please
fine. Thank
note
you.
it down. Okay, I've done a mistake here. But when you are doing it on the client side, it should be stub. Okay with it?
Yes, ma'am, fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. So we will stop for now because probably you have class. I'm so sorry for taking this much of class. Please attend the next class. Okay, tomorrow 4 to 5. See you at 4 o'clock.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.